So I'm going to show you guys how I made this lead and the plugin chain to it. Alright, so if we solo it, sorry, solo it. So I layered the sound 3 different times. You have one layer here, and one layer here. And then the third layer, I would take the end of the bar, and then I basically just copy duplicated it and made 2 more instruments out of it. And those kind of cut through at the end. What I did with those 2 sounds is that I actually took my lead and hooked up a compressor to a side change it to the other lead, to this little stabby part, and I'll show you why. So with the compressor, it pops out nicely and it's able to kind of sit in the forefront. Without the compressor, it kind of just sits in the background, doesn't really have much movement. Now when you turn on the compressor, it kind of gets shoved into the front of the mix, which is nice. It's kind of what I was looking for. And from there, I have a little EQ after the compressor. I have some OTT on there. I use 2 different OTTs. I use the Xfer, and then I also use the stock Ableton OTT. Kind of show you guys how I set up my OTT really quick. So for my OTT, what I'll normally do is these 3 things right off the bat. Put the output to about 10, change the time to about 500, and then I'll lower the amount to about 30%, and that'll kind of give me my starting point. From there, I'll mess around with the ratios, maybe mess around a little bit with the outputs, and then kind of get my final tuning from there. I have that going into, after OTT, I'm going into another EQ to kind of get rid of the low ends and give me some high ends. From there, I run it into a compressor. Supercharger is one of my favorites, especially if you're trying to get some thump. Usually I use the saturator, but the supercharger was kind of enough. And then from there, I have another EQ to kind of boost the high ends after the supercharger kind of brought them down a little bit. But then I have it going into a tremolo to give me some a little bit of movement, and then a lot of the ambient sound you're hearing from this is coming out of it's coming out of this effects rack right here, which is just 2 ROMs. I liked both of them, and I couldn't decide which one I wanted, so I just gave myself a little bit of each one, and give me a nice little sound. ROM is one of my favorite reverbs. I've used almost every single one of them, and ROM is just you don't have to do a lot of tweaking, which is what I like about it. Normally, you got to kind of mess with you know, EQs and the diffusion and the size. With ROM, you kind of just set it and forget it. You kind of just mess with the dry wood a little bit, unless you want some, like, really cool sounding reverb. And then from there, I have it going into a auto filter. Again, the auto filters give me some movement. I set up the envelope to kind of push it at a rate that's kind of slow. And then I have it going into a LFO, which is giving me more movement. Something you need a lot of in your sounds, especially if you want it to sound interesting, you need something to give it movement, because if it doesn't have movement, it's just going to sound very stagnant in the mix. It's going to just sound like someone just standing there. You want the sound to kind of like dance and move around. And then from the LFO, I have it going into my Apogee compressor, which is kind of just giving me a little bit of boost and kind of just gluing everything together. And then I have my Oxford inflator and my limiter at the end. And so that's kind of the gist of how this lead was made. There isn't a lot of automation. I just have a little automation going on with the tubes. Just kind of bringing the tubes back and forth, just giving me a little bit of resonance and a little bit of character in the sound so it doesn't sound so stagnant through the mix. And that's pretty much the gist of how the sound is made. Um, after after I make my sounds and group them together, I'll take another EQ and compressor, just kind of level everything out and kind of mesh the two sounds together. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, feel free to hit me up.